My name is Avery Collins. I'm 38 years old, and until my daughter's 11th birthday, I still believed there were certain lines family wouldn't cross. I was wrong. They skipped my daughter's birthday. Not quietly, not accidentally, not because life got busy and calendars got messy. They skipped it like it had been removed from the family record. No call. No text. No voicemail. Not even one lazy heart emoji under the photo Matthew posted of Emily standing beside her purple frosted cake, grinning in her hoodie, holding up both hands to make the number 11. My parents saw it, my brothers saw it, their wives saw it, their kids probably saw it too. And still, nothing. At first, Matthew told me to breathe. Maybe they're planning something, he said, but even he didn't sound like he believed it. Matthew had been in Emily's life for almost 4 years. He wasn't her father, and he never tried to force that title. But he was the one who helped build the balloon arch at midnight. He was the one who drove across town because Emily wanted the cake with the tiny edible stars. He was the one who whispered, "Smile for your mom," when Emily's face fell a little after checking my phone for the 3rd time. I kept telling myself there had to be a reason. Maybe someone was sick. Maybe there had been a fight I didn't know about. Maybe my mother had decided to punish me for something and forgot that Emily would feel the blow first. 2 nights before the party, during a family FaceTime, my brother Caleb had said something strange. "Next week's packed," he muttered, while my mother looked down and my father cleared his throat. My younger brother Mason laughed too quickly. My other brothers, Tyler and Grant, went quiet in that practiced way people do when they are all hiding the same thing. I noticed it. I just didn't understand it yet. Emily's birthday came and went, like a ghost had passed through our house. She had her best friend over. A neighbor kid came by with a handmade card. Matthew's mother sent flowers and a box of watercolor markers. Emily laughed. She ate cake. She opened her drawing tablet and hugged me so tightly I almost let myself believe the day had survived. Then, 2 days later, I got the Venmo request. It was from Caleb. $28.50. Group share for family cruise. For a second, I thought I had read it wrong. Then I saw the profile picture. All of them. My parents, my 4 brothers, their wives, their children. Sunburned, smiling, standing in front of a cruise ship with the ocean behind them like a postcard. I sat at the kitchen island with my phone in my hand while the room tilted around me. They hadn't forgotten Emily's birthday. They had boarded a ship. They had chosen matching lanyards, buffet lines, deck photos, and tropical drinks over my daughter blowing out candles in our living room. Matthew came in from the garage and stopped when he saw my face. "What happened?" I turned the phone toward him. His jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he said, very quietly, "They knew." That was the part that made my hands start shaking. They knew. My father had RSVP'd to Emily's birthday invitation with a thumbs up. My mother had asked what size hoodie Emily wore. Caleb had promised he would bring his kids. Mason had joked about stealing cake. They knew. And they left anyway. I didn't decline the Venmo request. I sent Caleb $1.50. In the note, I wrote, "Not on board." Then I got to work. First, I locked down every shared account connected to me. Bank logins, cloud drives, the family Dropbox my father insisted we use for tax records, the travel app they always made me help cover because everyone benefits from family planning. Not anymore. Then I sent one email to the bank. Subject line, "Cancel all linked cards." I attached my ID, confirmed I was the account holder, and requested every card tied to my authorization be frozen and reissued under new numbers. Their dispute came later. It went nowhere. The reply was simple. "Owner authorization confirmed." 5 minutes after that, my mother called me 10 times in a row. I watched every call light up my screen and disappear. Then she called Matthew. 10 more times. He looked at me from across the kitchen, phone buzzing in his hand. "Do you want me to answer?" "No." Then the text started. Screenshots of the cruise itinerary. A group selfie with the caption, "Wish you were here." And finally, one message from my mother. "This is a family matter. Don't destroy us over one trip." One trip. Matthew read it and gave a humorless laugh. "One trip," he said. "They left a child out on purpose." I didn't answer, because if I opened my mouth, I knew something ugly would come out. That night, after Emily went upstairs with her new tablet, Matthew and I sat in the dark living room, whispering like the walls might repeat us. "She can't know everything," he said. "She'll know enough," I whispered. "Kids always do." The next morning, my father emailed me. Subject line, "Let's be civil." That was when I knew he wasn't sorry. The email was polished, careful, almost corporate. He claimed the cruise had been spontaneous, that there had been a discount window, that the dates had, unfortunately, overlapped with Emily's birthday. He blamed spotty service. He blamed confusion. He blamed timing. He blamed everything, except the people who had packed suitcases and walked onto that ship. He ended with, "We miss you, and hope this doesn't become bigger than it needs to be." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not bigger than it needs to be. As if Emily's hurt had a correct size. As if betrayal should fit inside whatever box made him comfortable. I didn't reply. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Mason. He stood on my porch holding a plastic, cruise-themed gift bag, shifting from one foot to the other, like the house itself made him nervous. He didn't knock. He just placed the bag on the mat and left. Matthew watched from behind me. "Don't open it," he said. But I did. Inside was a cheap keychain shaped like a cruise ship, a glitter pen that said Paradise 2025, and a $50 Claire's gift card. The envelope was addressed to Emily. Mason had written, "Sorry we missed it. Love you forever." That was it. No explanation. No apology to me. No apology to Matthew. No apology that sounded like it understood what had happened. I dropped the card into the trash. An hour later, Emily found the bag. I hadn't buried it deep enough. She came running into the kitchen, holding the keychain like treasure. "Mom, Uncle Mason left this. He said they'll take me next time." Matthew turned away from the sink. I felt something inside me crack so cleanly, it almost made a sound. I forced myself to smile. "That's nice, baby," I said. "We'll talk about it later." But that night, my father left a voicemail. He didn't ask about Emily. He didn't mention the birthday. He opened with business. The Tempe Project, one of our most profitable developments under the family company. The company everyone loved calling ours, even though I owned the majority, signed the loans, carried the risk, and cleaned up every mess my father created. I called him back. I gave him 2 minutes of politeness. Then I said, "I'm removing myself from the business. You have 30 days to take your names off anything tied to my accounts. After that, you're frozen out." Silence. Then my father said, "You're willing to blow up everything we built over a child's birthday party?" A child's birthday party. Not Emily. Not his granddaughter. Not the little girl who used to draw him birthday cards with crooked hearts. Just a child. I hung up. Later that night, Emily came into our bedroom crying. She climbed between Matthew and me, small and trembling, and asked what she had done wrong. I told her nothing. Matthew told her twice. She nodded like she wanted to believe us. Then, right before falling asleep, she whispered something that chilled me more than any phone call had. "Grandma said you were just mad because you weren't invited." I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. That was when I understood. They weren't just defending themselves. They were already rewriting the story. And they were using my daughter to do it. A week after my father's voicemail, the noise stopped. No calls. No texts. No passive-aggressive Facebook comments from my mother about family loyalty or people who abandon those who raised them. Nothing. The silence should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing in a field right before lightning hits. Matthew noticed it too. One evening, while we were folding laundry together, he looked toward the front window and said quietly, "Your family doesn't do silence, unless they're planning something." He was right. 2 days later, a thick envelope appeared in our mailbox with no return address. Just my name. Careful handwriting. Inside were copies of old business contracts from over a decade ago, back when I helped my father save the company after the housing crash nearly buried us. Loan agreements. Property transfers. Restructuring documents. Buried between the pages was a yellow sticky note. "Let's talk before things get messy." Matthew read it over my shoulder and let out a low breath. "That's not guilt," he said. "That's intimidation." I knew exactly who had sent it. My father never yelled, when he could threaten quietly instead. He preferred pressure. Pressure looked respectable. The next morning, I started officially separating every remaining asset tied to the family business. I gave them 30 days to remove themselves from anything under my authorization. That included the office lease my parents still used, the shared company card my brothers charged client dinners to every month, the tax account they all leaned on every April like it was a public utility. Matthew helped me go through every document. He became ruthless in a way I had never seen before. Not emotional. Precise. Every time he found another hidden expense linked to my accounts, his expression darkened a little more. "I can't believe they've been using you like this," he muttered one night. I almost laughed. The truth was worse. I had believed helping them meant we were close. That was the trick. A few days later, while I was reviewing contracts in my office, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Emily's school. My stomach dropped immediately. The secretary sounded confused. "Miss Collins? Emily was already picked up today by her grandmother." For a second, I genuinely stopped breathing. I grabbed my keys so fast they slipped from my hand. Matthew met me at the front door before I even called him. "What happened?" My mother took Emily. The drive to the school felt endless. Every terrible possibility tore through my head. Had they convinced Emily we were the villains? Were they trying to force some kind of confrontation? Had my mother lost her mind completely? When I finally pulled into the parking lot, I saw them immediately. Emily sat on a bench beside my mother, holding a milkshake and a tiny shopping bag, laughing like nothing was wrong. My mother looked up as I approached. Not surprised. Not guilty. Just calm. That calm terrified me more than panic would have. Emily jumped up first. "Mom, Grandma took me for ice cream." I looked directly at my mother. "You picked her up without permission." "We were spending time together," she replied smoothly. No apology. No acknowledgement that schools have rules. No acknowledgement that parents matter. Just entitlement. Emily kept smiling, unaware of the tension slicing through the air. My mother crouched to fix Emily's jacket collar and said sweetly, "Families shouldn't stay angry forever." Then she stood and handed Emily's shopping bag to me like she was transferring property. I kept my voice level. "This never happens again." Her smile tightened slightly. "We'll see." That night, I sent one text to the entire family group thread. No one picks up Emily without written permission from me or Matthew again. Ever. Nobody replied. But the next morning, Emily's school counselor called. My mother had attempted to add herself as an emergency contact. When the school refused without parental consent, she argued that she had rights as a grandmother. Matthew lost it. "She's escalating," he snapped, pacing our kitchen. "Avery, this isn't normal anymore." "I know. We should call a lawyer." "I already am." But I wasn't thinking about police yet. I was thinking about leverage. My family understood leverage better than love. So I called the accountant who handled all the family books, an old college friend named Daniel. "I want every financial tie severed," I told him. He didn't ask questions, just sighed quietly and said, "Understood." That same afternoon, I revoked my father's access to our real estate development platform. Within an hour, he emailed me. 2 sentences. "Didn't realize things were this bad. Emily needs her grandparents. Let's fix this." That was when something cold settled permanently inside me. It wasn't about Emily. It had never been about Emily. If it were, they would have remembered her birthday before they remembered their cruise deposit. They were panicking because the money flow was disappearing. Emily was just the emotional crowbar they were using to pry the door back open. That weekend, Emily asked if she could FaceTime with Grandma. Matthew looked at me carefully. I nodded. "Letter." I stayed in the hallway while Emily sat cross-legged on her bed holding the phone. At first, the conversation sounded harmless. My mother complimented Emily's drawings, asked about school, asked whether she still liked purple hoodies. Then came the pivot. Soft. Calculated. "Does your mom seem angry all the time lately?" Emily frowned slightly. "I don't know. Sometimes adults get overwhelmed with money problems," my mother continued gently, "and they forget about love." I closed my eyes. There it was. Not screaming. Not threats. Poison delivered in teaspoons. Emily changed the subject quickly, but later that night, while brushing her teeth, she asked me something that shattered me. "Mom, are we poor now?" I stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. "No, baby. Grandma said money changes people." I knelt beside her. "No," I whispered. "People reveal who they are when money gets involved." She didn't fully understand. Thank God she didn't. That same night, I scheduled a meeting with our lawyer. Not to sue them. Not yet. I revised my trust, removed my parents from every future financial structure connected to Emily. I refused to let my daughter inherit emotional debt disguised as family loyalty. Then something unexpected happened. Matthew got a phone call from Caleb's wife, Lauren. They hadn't spoken in months. Lauren sounded nervous. She claimed she hadn't agreed with the cruise plan. Said she thought skipping Emily's birthday was cruel. Said my mother told everyone I wanted the party private and didn't want the rest of the family there. Matthew listened quietly while she talked. Finally, he asked one simple question. "Did you believe that?" Lauren hesitated. Then she sighed and said, "Do you really think Emily should lose her whole family over this?" Matthew looked at me across the room. That sentence told us everything. Still no accountability. Still using Emily as emotional currency. After the call ended, Matthew rubbed his face and muttered, "They'll never admit what they did." "No," I said softly, "because then they'd have to admit what kind of people they are." The next morning, I pulled our final joint project, the Scottsdale apartment build-out, out from under the family company completely. It was the biggest development we had, and I was the primary investor. I moved everything under my private LLC. New accountant. New management. New legal team. No shared passwords. No shared authority. No shared anything. When my father realized what I had done, he called 6 times in a row. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat Emily down that evening with Matthew beside me. She hugged her knees to her chest while listening carefully. "We're making changes with the family," I explained gently. "You can still love Grandma and Grandpa, but we need space right now." Emily stayed quiet for a long moment. Then she surprised both of us. "Can you still forgive them someday?" I swallowed hard. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you're the good one," she said softly. "And if the good one turns mean, then who's left?" The room went completely still. Matthew looked down immediately. I couldn't answer her, because for the first time since all this started, I felt something dangerously close to guilt. Not for protecting my daughter, but for how easily hatred had begun to feel justified. 2 weeks into the silence, the atmosphere around our house changed again. Heavier. Like something was approaching. Matthew sensed it before I did. "This isn't over," he said one night while locking the front door. And he was right. The next morning, an email arrived from a real estate attorney claiming my younger brother Tyler believed he had undocumented equity participation in the Scottsdale project. I actually laughed when I read it. Tyler once called it your desert thing during a Zoom meeting. Now suddenly he owned part of it? I forwarded the email to my lawyer. His reply came back within minutes. 0 legal basis. Let him try. But it wasn't about winning. It was a warning shot. A reminder that blood could become leverage the second money entered the room. Later that same day, Emily received a package. No return address. Inside was a silver necklace with a small heart pendant. A note in my mother's handwriting said, "Never forget where you come from." Emily loved it instantly. Matthew watched her clasp it around her neck before school with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger. Helplessness. Fear. Maybe all 3. I touched his arm gently. "Let them keep showing us who they are." He looked at me for a long moment. "And what if Emily starts believing them?" I didn't answer, because that fear kept me awake too. The next time I saw my father, he walked into my office building like he still owned part of my life. It was a Thursday evening. Most of my staff had already gone home, and I was buried in contracts for the Scottsdale project when my assistant texted me. "Your dad is here." At first, I thought she meant outside, maybe waiting in the parking lot. But when I stepped into the reception area, there he was, sitting calmly on one of the leather chairs, with a coffee in one hand and a thin folder resting on his knee. Like this was a normal visit, like we were still the kind of family that dropped by unannounced. He stood when he saw me. "Avery?" I didn't answer. He smiled anyway. "Can we stop acting like strangers?" The nerve of that almost impressed me. This was the same man who skipped his granddaughter's birthday, tried intimidating me with legal documents, and used Emily as emotional leverage. Now he wanted civility. I opened my office door and stepped aside silently. He walked in like he had won something. Once the door shut behind us, he placed the folder on my desk carefully. "I came to talk." "No," I said evenly. "You came because you're losing access." His jaw tightened slightly. "You think this is about money?" "I know it is." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he sat across from me and leaned back with that familiar expression he always wore during negotiations, the one designed to make people feel emotional while he stayed reasonable. "I don't understand why you're escalating this." I laughed softly. That surprised him. "Escalating?" I repeated. "You left my daughter alone on her birthday." "It was a scheduling mistake." "No, it was a choice." His eyes hardened. "You've always done this." "Done what?" Turned every disagreement into a war. There it was, the rewrite. The quiet reframing where my reaction became the problem instead of their actions. I folded my arms. "You picked a cruise over Emily." "We already explained." "No," I interrupted. "You explained why you thought it was acceptable." Silence stretched between us. Then he pushed the folder toward me. Inside were revised business projections. Tempe, Scottsdale, future developments. He was still trying to negotiate through money. "I'm willing to restructure ownership," he said carefully, "but tearing apart the family company helps nobody." "Funny," I replied. "You didn't care about tearing apart the family." His expression finally cracked, just slightly. "You're punishing everyone over one incident." I stared at him. "One incident?" I whispered. "Emily cried herself to sleep asking what she did wrong." He looked away first. Not guilty, just uncomfortable. That was worse somehow. When he left, he paused near the doorway. "She still needs us." I looked directly at him. "No," I said quietly. "You need her." The next morning, Caleb called. Not angry, scared. "Avery," he said immediately, "Mom and Dad are talking to lawyers." I leaned back slowly in my chair. "What kind of lawyers?" "They want visitation rights." For a second, everything inside me went completely still. "Excuse me?" "They're serious," he rushed out. "Not custody or anything crazy, just court-recognized visitation. They think you're cutting them off unfairly." I nearly laughed from disbelief. Unfairly. My mother skipped Emily's birthday, manipulated her emotionally, picked her up from school without permission, and somehow I was the unreasonable one. Caleb kept talking. "Mom says you left them no choice." I hung up before he finished. When Matthew got home that night, I handed him the phone. He read the messages silently. Then he sat down very carefully beside me. "We're done playing nice." I nodded once. That night, our dining table became a war room. Matthew organized screenshots. I gathered emails. We documented missed birthdays, the Venmo request, school incidents, manipulative texts, every single voicemail. Even the cruise selfie. Especially the cruise selfie. At one point, Matthew held up his phone and muttered, "I can't believe these people raised you." Neither could I anymore. But the worst moment came later. After dinner, Emily walked quietly into the kitchen holding her sketchbook. She tore out a page and handed it to me without speaking. In careful handwriting, she had written, "I think they want you to hate them forever. Don't let them win." I stared at the paper so long the words blurred. Matthew looked over my shoulder and exhaled slowly. "She shouldn't have to think about this," he whispered. But she did, because adults had dragged her into their damage. That night, after Emily went to bed, I opened my laptop and started typing an email. "Mom, Dad, let's meet." I stared at it for nearly 10 minutes. Then finally, I hit send. They chose the diner near the old movie theater from our childhood. Of course they did. My mother always weaponized nostalgia when she wanted forgiveness without accountability. I arrived exactly at 6. They were already seated in a cracked red booth near the window. My father smiled immediately when he saw me. My mother looked exhausted. Not sad. Worn down. I didn't sit right away. "We just want to talk," my father said gently. I slid into the booth slowly. The waitress came by. Nobody ordered. For the first few minutes, they acted almost normal. They asked about Emily, about Matthew, about work. I answered with one-word responses until my mother finally leaned forward and sighed. "Avery," she said softly, "are you really willing to destroy this family over a misunderstanding?" Misunderstanding. I actually smiled at that. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. "You think this is about one birthday?" I asked quietly. My father rubbed his temples. "You're making everything bigger than it needs to be." "No," I replied. "I'm finally seeing it clearly." My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "We love Emily." "Then why did she spend her birthday wondering why nobody came?" Neither of them answered. I continued before they could redirect again. "You manipulated her. You tried to pick her up without permission. You threatened legal action." "We panicked," my father said quickly. There it was again. Not apology, explanation. He reached into his jacket and removed several papers. "A proposal," he said carefully. I looked down. Written terms. Bi-weekly visits with Emily. Financial independence between all parties. No interference in my businesses. No legal action from either side. Formal boundaries. Signed and witnessed. It was cleaner than I expected. Almost desperate. My mother watched me carefully. "We don't want to lose her." Not you. Her. Even now, Emily was still the emotional center of every negotiation. I folded the papers calmly. "I'll think about it." Then I stood and walked out before either of them could stop me. That night, Matthew and I sat at the kitchen counter, reading every line of the agreement. "What do you think?" he asked finally. I rubbed my forehead tiredly. "I think they're terrified." "Good." I looked at him. "You hate them." "Yes," he admitted immediately. "For what they did to Emily." I couldn't argue with that. The next morning, Emily padded into the kitchen, still wearing her pajamas. She noticed the papers immediately. "Are we still a broken family?" she asked quietly. The question hit harder than anything my parents had said at the diner. I pulled her gently into my lap. "I don't know." She thought for a second. "They're not good at being nice," she said carefully. "But they still want to be near me. That means something, right?" Matthew looked away instantly, because neither of us had an answer ready for that kind of innocence. And maybe that was the moment everything shifted. Not toward trust, not toward forgiveness, but toward exhaustion. I was tired of being angry every second of every day, tired of building walls around Emily's childhood, tired of feeling like hatred had become another inheritance passing through generations. So I signed the agreement. Not because my parents deserved it, not because I trusted them, but because my daughter still believed people could choose to do better. And I wasn't ready to be the one who killed that belief. The financial separation remained permanent. The company became entirely mine. Quiet, clean, untouchable. Visits with my parents started small. A few supervised afternoons, then dinners, then holidays. Nobody mentioned the cruise anymore. Nobody mentioned the birthday. But sometimes I caught my mother watching Emily with this tight expression on her face, like someone who knew exactly how close she had come to losing something forever. And every time I saw it, I remembered the truth. They never apologized. They surrendered. 6 months passed. The agreement mostly held. My parents stayed polite around Matthew and me. Emily seemed lighter again. For the first time in a long while, our house stopped feeling like a battlefield. Then one afternoon, a thick yellow envelope arrived from a probate attorney in Arizona. Matthew opened it before I got home. When I walked into the kitchen, he was sitting at the table surrounded by papers. His expression alone told me something was wrong. What happened? He handed me a letter already unfolded. It was dated 5 years earlier. From my Uncle Ronald, my father's estranged younger brother. I hadn't seen him since my graduation. Apparently, he had died 6 months ago. No funeral, no obituary, nothing. But he had left behind something unexpected. 53 acres of land outside Sedona. And he left it to me. Not my father, not the family, me. I kept reading with growing disbelief. In the letter, Uncle Ronald wrote, "I watched your father long enough to know what kind of man he is. I think you're the only one who might not ruin this place." Matthew slid another document toward me, a legal note from the probate attorney. My father had quietly attempted to contest the will weeks earlier, claimed undue influence. The motion was denied, but according to the attorney, he might try again. I laughed, once. Sharp, humorless. Even after everything, he still couldn't stop reaching for things that weren't his. A week later, I flew to Arizona alone. The property was breathtaking. Wild desert, red rock, open sky so huge it made me feel painfully small. And near a dry creek bed stood a tiny wooden cabin, hand-built, simple. Inside, carved into one of the beams, was a single word, Emily. I stared at it for a long time. My uncle had never even met her. Yet somehow, in all his distance and silence, he had left behind something more genuine than most of what my own father ever gave me. That night, standing outside beneath the cold desert stars, I called my father. He answered on the second ring. "I know about the land," I said. Silence. Then finally, "It would have been wasted on you." I closed my eyes, and in that moment, something inside me finally settled. No agreement, no dinner, no legal paper, no forced family holiday would ever repair what was broken between us. Some people don't heal. They just learn how to hide the damage better. I kept the land. I never developed it, never sold it. And I made one final decision. When Emily turns 18, it will belong to her. Maybe she'll burn the cabin down. Maybe she'll build something beautiful there instead. Either way, it will finally belong to someone who understands what family should have been all along.